Ukraine's foreign minister visits China. Why now? And what could come out of his trip? And U.S. business executives visit Beijing after the third plenum of the 20th CPC Central Committee. My exclusive with one of them, Roberta Lipson, founder of United Family Healthcare. Welcome to a special edition of The Point, an opinion show coming to you from Beijing. I'm Li Xin. Ukraine's foreign minister visits China. At Beijing's invitation, Ukraine's foreign minister Dmytro Kuleba arrived in China on the 23rd of July to begin a four-day visit. He met with China's foreign minister Wang Wednesday in the southern city of Guangzhou. During the meeting, Kuleba said Ukraine highly appreciates China's positive and constructive role in promoting peace and maintaining international order. Wang said that China and Ukraine are friends. What exactly did the two sides talk about? What possible role could China play to help make peace in Ukraine? I was pleased to be joined from Beijing by Jian Junbo, Associate Professor and Deputy Director of the Center for China-Europe Relations at Fudan University, and also from Shanghai by Josef Mahoney, Professor at East China's Normal University. Joseph, what is your take on the visit? It's rather short notice to the public, at least. It's only announced the day before, but he's staying for 4 days. What explains this trip?
Well, I think, obviously China did extend the invitation, but we often don't see press on these events until they're underway, because there's so much that can derail them, so many circumstances that might lead them astray, and we don't want to promote something that isn't going to happen. That's going to embarrass everyone and cast doubt on the process. So, you have to move prudently on these matters. But I think in terms of the timing, certainly Ukraine understands that its primary backer, Joe Biden, is pulling out of the U.S. presidential race. And even if Biden had won in November, it was likely the U.S. was going to pivot away from Ukraine. If we understand this as a proxy war between Russia and the United States, we haven't seen much change in the lines since December 2022. Neither the U.S. nor Russia are really pressing their full power and ability right now in Ukraine. And so it's been the case that sooner or later we were going to have to get to a political and diplomatic solution. The main drag on that, by some analysis, was the fact that Biden had invested so much politically in this conflict and was unable to sort of back away from it before November. But with Harris now taking the helm for the Democrats, it's not clear that she has to carry that baggage as she moves forward. So it was prudent for Ukraine to go ahead and start trying to find a solution, and certainly China would be very instrumental in helping to find that.
Professor Jian, do you agree with the assessment of Joseph that it's because of the changes in the U.S. domestic policy that kind of propels Ukraine to turn to China for a greater role?
Somehow I agree. Because since the outbreak of the war, it has lasted about 2.5 years. So it's a very long time for Kyiv and also for Moscow to address this conflict. And of course, it's a very hard time for Kyiv, I think, now to deal with this issue. So it's necessary for Kyiv to find out some approach to change the situation. So I think the Kuleba visit to China is also a new approach to change the situation.
According to Ukraine, Kuleba said during the talks with Mr. Wang that I'm convinced that a just peace in Ukraine is in China's strategic interests, and China's role as a global force for peace is important. Professor Jian, what possible role, or does Ukraine have an idea of the kind of role that it expects China to play?
I think China cannot, as a mediator to address the negotiation between Moscow and Kyiv.
So did you say that China is not in the position to play the mediator? Why not?
Because China is not the relevant, actor of this conflict. But China is a responsible state, so China can help to prepare for the negotiation between Kiev and Moscow, because this negotiation is very complicated, and it's not easy to reach consensus in the negotiation. So negotiation should be taking place between Kiev and Moscow, but China as a power can help them to to negotiate.
Yeah. That's your take. Joseph, what is your take of the kind of role that China possibly is envisioning itself in playing? Because China seems to be quite open. Mr. Wang said, although the conditions and timing are not yet ripe, we support all efforts conducive to peace and will continue to play a constructive role to enable a ceasefire and resume the peace talks. So does China see itself as a peace broker, as a mediator, or a facilitator of direct negotiations?
I think that would require some speculation at this point. I'm sure that China would be willing to play the role of mediator if both sides were willing to accept that, and it's possible to envision. I agree with my colleague here in Shanghai that it is a very complicated situation, and China has demonstrated in the past that it can either serve as the initial mediator or simply as the great power that comes in at the end to sort of close the deal and guarantee it. But I think what we can also see from China is rallying other countries, for example, Brazil or other significant powers, particularly those in the global south, that want to see a diplomatic and peaceful resolution. And certainly we can see China empowering other mediators or simply providing the logistical or location support to those processes. So I think at this point it's very fluid, but how it actually shakes out remains to be seen. I do agree with Wang's assessment that the time is not yet ripe. The preconditions that Kiev has put on the table are still sort of a non-starter for Russia. And unfortunately, Russia, although it's a slow grind, the current conflict still is benefiting the strategic position of Russia. So there's still a bit of a division there, but I think that we're getting closer and closer to the moment when that fruit will be ripe, and I think China will be there to help pick it.
Finally, Joseph, the elephant in the room. China has a very close relationship with Russia, and the West has been pressuring China to put more pressure on Russia or stop its trade relationship, at least the so-called dual-use trade relationship with Russia. Are there any potential conflicts of interest that China needs to navigate? And if so, how does it plan to address them?
Well, let me touch on the previous question just for a moment. I don't think that China does have a well-developed peace plan. They probably have an outline of what they think might be a starting point. But to go back to an earlier point that you raised, that Kuleba is going to be here for 4 days, and why is he going to be here so long? I think that China is trying to come to a really clear, practical understanding with Kuleba about how they might move forward with a workable peace plan, and maybe that's what was happening in those meetings. Now, with regard to your question on is there a conflict of interest, certainly we have seen in Western criticism of China that China's strategic partnership with Russia is a conflict of interest. Certainly there have been unfounded allegations of China providing lethal aid to Russia in this conflict. And certainly there's sort of this other issue. Sometimes we see this talked about in among online discussions in China, but Vance, Trump's vice presidential running mate, has said that the U.S. should quit supporting Ukraine so it can pour all of its focus and weapons into Taiwan. And so some people think that if this conflict is resolved in Ukraine, then China may face a greater threat with the U.S. meddling in the Taiwan issue. I think all of these are not really issues. As Kuleba pointed out, Ukraine has a strategic partnership with China as well. As Wang pointed out, Ukraine was an early supporter of the BRI. And I think that it's clear that China has suffered tremendously from this conflict, in so much as the U.S. has been able to weaponize it to undermine China's positive relations with Europe. So I think finding a solution here is something that's really in China's best interest. I think Ukraine understands that, and maybe this is why we're going to move forward.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Many thanks to Jian Junbo, Associate Professor and Deputy Director at the Center for China-Europe Relations at Fudan University, and Joseph Mahoney, Professor at East China Normal University.